Hello friends, I welcome you all to this online session of a poetry paper BA Part 3 Special English. In the last few sessions we were discussing about Victorian poetry, Victorian poets, Victorian age, and we tried to understand Victorian poetry. So let us now begin with another important Victorian poet whose influence we can measure not only in literature but also on a politics and social aspects of a Victorian period. So the Arthur Hugh Clarke was born on 1st January 1890 and died on 13 November 1861. That means only 42 years of age he got to live. So was an English poet, educationalist and the devoted assistant of a Florence Nightingale. He was the brother of a suffragette Anne Clarke and father of a Blanche Athene Clarke, who born become principals of New, who both become principals of Newman, sorry, Newham College, Cambridge. So you can understand that Arthur Hugh Clarke. So Arthur Hugh Clarke was born in Liverpool to James Butler Clarke, a cotton merchant of Welsh descent, and Annie Perfect Mom, Pontefract in Yorkshire. James Butler Clarke was a younger son of a landed gentry family that had been living at Plough Clarke in Denbighshire since 1567. So all these things I think are very not very significant. We should understand that he born in Liverpool and in 1822 the family moved to the United States, and Clark's early childhood was spent mainly in Charleston, South Carolina. So it is in America. So though he born in Britain, born in London, or born in England, in his childhood he moved to America. In 1828, Clark and his older brother Charles Butler Clark, later head of Clark family of Llewellyn of, returned to England to attend school in Chester. So afterwards he returned to England for the schooling. Holidays were often spent at Beaumaris. In 1829, Clark began attending rugby school, then under Thomas Arnold. Uh, Thomas Arnold, you can see Thomas Arnold was an English educator and historian. Arnold was early supporter of the Broad Church Anglican movement. You can understand. So the this Thomas Arnold uh, was then in charge of this rugby school, whose belief in rigorous education and lifestyle he accepted. So this is what you can see is very influential to this author, this poet. Cut off to a large degree from his family, passed a somewhat solitary boyhood. So as his family is situated in America, in South Carolina, he is living in England. So you can see he lead a very isolated kind of boyhood. And when this solitary boyhood uh, is lived, you can see these boys become very independent. So these solitary in his solitary boyhood, he devoted to the school and to early literary efforts in the rugby magazine. So you can see he also write in the rugby magazine. In 1836, his parents returned to Liverpool, and in 1837 he won a scholarship to Balliol College, Oxford. So you can see all these things happening in his life. His family also returned to Liverpool from America in 1837. 1836, and in the same year, in the next year, in fact, in 1837, he won a scholarship to Balliol College, Oxford. Here, his contemporaries include Benjamin Jowett, Arthur Penry Stanley, John Campbell Shea, William George Watt, and Frederick Temple. Matthew Arnold, 4 years his junior, arrived the term after Clark had graduated. Clark and Arnold enjoyed an intense friendship in Oxford. So you can understand all these things, all these friend circle are also very important. So see, Benjamin Jowett was an influential tutor and administrator, reformer in University of Oxford. Author Benethry Stanley, known as a Dean Stanley, was an English Anglican priest and ecclesiastical historian. Or John Campbell Shape, you can see, was a Scottish critic and man of letters. William George Ward, a theologian and mathematician. Or Frederick Temple, you can see, academician, teacher, and churchman who served as a bishop of Exeter, bishop of London, and archbishop of Canterbury. So you can understand that all these friend circle, all these companions at a rugby school also influences this author, influences uh, this poet. Then Matthew Arnold, the son of Thomas Arnold, also came into this rugby school, but he was a 4 year junior to him. But then also they enjoyed an intense friendship at Oxford. So Oxford in 1837 was in the full swell of a high church movement led by John Henry Newman. See why what is high church? See, high church is a term. High church refer to belief and practices of a Christian ecclesiology, liturgy, and theology, and that emphasizes formality and resistance to modernization. So this is what, as I told you, this is the Victorian period where you can see few of the poets were affiliated to the tradition. They were not moving or they were resisting to the modernism. So in this period, we can observe two opposite tendencies in the author. One is related to the belief and second is related to the science. So this high church movement is also against the modernism. They were believing in Christian ecclesiology, liturgy, and theology that emphasizes formality and resistance. So this is formality and resistance to modernization. So this is what you can see is very prominent in the Oxford at the time when this uh, author or this poet uh, Arthur uh, entered into Oxford rugby school of an Oxford University. So Clog was for time influenced by this movement, but eventually rejected it. So Clog also get influenced by this movement, but afterwards he rejected it and aloof from it. He surprised everyone by graduating from Oxford with only second class honors, but won a fellowship with a tutorship at Oriel College. So you can understand he passed the second with the second class honors. He became unwilling to teach the doctrines of the Church of England as his tutorship required for him. And as a result, in 1848, he resigned the position and traveled to Paris, where he witnessed the Revolution of 1848. Ralph Waldo Emerson was also a parish at that time, was also in Paris at that time, and Clark saw him daily in a May and June. And month later, after his return to England, as Edward Everett Hell tells the story, we will read the story. You can understand that Ralph Waldo Emerson, he is also a very significant essayist. If it is possible for you, read his essays. It is a classical one. So Waldo was an American essayist, lecturer, philosopher, abolitionist, and poet who led the transcendentalist movement of the mid 19th century. He was seen as a champion of individualism. So you can understand Ralph Waldo Emerson also greatly influences this clock. So see, there is a story told by this Clog and this Emerson by Edward Halley. So what he says, he Clog accompanied the Emerson to Liverpool to see him off on his return to the United States, saying sadly, "What shall we do without you? Think where we are. Carlyle has led us all out into desert, and he has left us here, left us there. a remark which was exactly true. Emerson said in a reply that very many of the fine young men in the England had said this to him as he went up and down in his journeying there. And I put my hand upon his head as we walked, and I said, Clog, that is Emerson is saying to Clog, Clog, I concentrate, you Bishop of all England. So it shall be your part to go up and down through the desert to find out these wanderers and to lead them into a promised land. So this is what you can see. Emerson, a very prominent author, prominent essayist, prominent thinker, prominent philosopher of the period, also think that the claw is a worthy that he can be confronted with Bishop of all England. He in fact gives him, shoulders him a responsibility to bring the such a kind of people like him uh, under one under a one moment and lead them into the promised land. So this is what you can see is the story told by Hale. So you can understand why I told you this story, because it is also very important to understand the significance of clock. Clock is a very significant, very intellectual person of the period. In the summer of 1848, Clock wrote his long poem, that is Bothi to Thoberna Woolwich. So the subtitled as a long vacation pastoral is a lengthy narrative poem by Arthur Hugh Clarke, which was critically well received at the time. So this is what you can so this poem also follow its main character Philip as a departs from his Oxford. So this is what also receive. You can understand that it also receives critically received this poem by the academicians or critics of the time. A farewell to the academic life, following it up with poems from his time as a student and tutor. So he is saying goodbye, farewell to this academic life, and on that occasion in 1848, because from 1837 he was there in Oxford. So from 1837 to 1848 he lived there, and he is saying goodbye to this or farewell to this Oxford academic life. So he is saying a long vocation pastoral. On this he write his poem, a long poem, following it up with the poems from his time as a student and tutor in the shared publication Ambrevilla. So see, this is Ambrevilla. What is Ambrevilla? Ambrevilla was a Roman agricultural fertile right held on 29th May in honor of a Ceres and Didia. So you can understand that this is a Roman uh, religious or social uh, right. So in 1849, he witnessed another revolution, the siege of a Roman republic, which inspired another long poem, Amour de Voyage, reprinted by Person Books, or then Easter Day, written in Nepal's, was a passionate denial of the resurrection and the forerunner of the unfinished poem Depositus. So, since 1846, Locke had been financially responsible for his mother and sister. So he has to take the responsibility of mother and sister in 1846. In the autumn of 1849, to provide for them, he became a principal of University Hall, a hostel of Unitarian students at University College London, but found its ideology as oppressive as that which he had left behind in Oxford. So he soon found that he disliked London in spite of the friendship of Thomas Carlyle and his wife Jane Walls Carlyle. So again, Carlyle is again another very significant personality of the period. He is a Scottish historian, satirical writer, essayist, translator, philosopher, mathematician, and a teacher. You can see a very versatile person he was. So he also get influenced by Thomas Carlyle in his youth. So a prospect of a post in Sydney led him to engage himself to Bletch Mary Shore Smith, daughter of Samuel Smith, of a Combe Herd Surrey and Mary Shore. But when that failed to materialize, he traveled in 1852 to Cambridge, Massachusetts, encouraged by Ralph Aldo Emerson. So again, Emerson in 1842 influences him to visit to Cambridge. There he remained several months, lecturing and editing Plutarch for the booksellers until in 1853 the offer of an examinership in education office brought him to London once again. So he again returned to from Massachusetts to London. He married Miss Shore Smith and pursued a steady official career, diversified only by an appointment in 1856 as a secretary to commission sent to study foreign military education. So you can understand he is also educationalist, and as a result of that, you can see uh, this his career as an educationalist also influences his poetry. So he devoted enormous energy to work as an unpaid secretarial assistant to his wife's cousin Florence Nightingale. He wrote virtually no poetry for 6 years. So this is a Florence Nightingale. You can see Florence Nightingale was an English social reformer, statistician, and founder of a modern nursing. So Nightingale came to prominence while serving as a manager and trainer of nurses during the Crimean War. So it was the only war fought in the only second war fought in the Victorian period. So this he worked his wife as a secretarial assistant to his wife's cousin Florence Nightingale. He wrote virtually no poetry for 6 years. So you can understand that Alfred Lord Tennyson virtually no poetry for 10 years. This Clog virtually no poetry for 6 years. So in 1860 his health began to fail. He visited first Great Malvern and freshwater Isle of Wight. From April 1861, he traveled strenuously in Greece, Turkey, and France, where he met up with a Tennyson family. So he also met up with the Tennyson family. Despite his fragile health, his continental tour renewed a state of euphoria like that of 1848-49, and he quickly wrote the elements of his last long poem, Mari Magono. So his wife joined him on a voyage from Switzerland to Italy, where he uh, contracted malaria. So this is what you can say the last days of this great author uh, Clog, who died due to malaria. He died in Florence on 13th November 1861. He buried in the English cemetery there in tomb that his wife and sister had Susan Horner designed from Jane Francois Champolin's book on Egyptian historiography. Matthew Arnold wrote the elegy of a Thyrsis to his memory. So Matthew Arnold also wrote a elegy on this poet Clog Thyrsis. Clog and his wife had three children: Arthur, Florence, and Bletch Athen. So you can understand these three children's children also become a very prominence in the latter period. So the young child Blanche Arthur Clock devote her life to Newman College, Cambridge, where her aunt sister Annie was a principal. So this is what you can see is the life of a Arthur Hugh Clock. So see the writings. Uh, or we will see the writing in the next session, or instead of that I will post one video on it. You can see it, and we will go for the next author. We will stop here and continue the same in the next session. Thank you for listening.